Who are the top fantasy football players you should be targeting on the waiver wire ahead of week one? It's time to break it down right here and right now as we begin the regular season edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
Our Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. We're here at Locked On. We've moved on past draft mode. We're now into week one mode. So can't believe the season is here for the NFL. Thursday night kickoff, Bills, Rams. We'll have some exciting players on the field. Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen. The excitement will begin, and the fantasy points will start to be put up on the board. Now, we already need help with our rosters, don't we? We just drafted our teams here looking ahead of week one. We're going to start a watch list here for players that we should be targeting on the waiver wire. Some players that probably should have been drafted in your leagues that are still out there that can bolster your roster, maybe shake up some things at the bottom there where you didn't like the depth picks you made. You were a little bit rushed, want to change some things there. There's plenty of players that we know are going to have a big impact that are undrafted here in fantasy football. So it begins in week one. You got to look at the waiver wire right away and be diligent here. Be careful with your fab budget. Be careful with your waiver priorities. But if players are out there as free agents or players that are afterthoughts here in week one, it's a good time to stash those players before everyone else is on them. And we have stats, and then you're competing for all these players. So it's important to look at the waiver wire in week one. We'll break that down for you here. We'll go position by position. We'll tackle running backs first. That should be managed in a lot of leagues. Look at wide receivers. And then we're going to do this every Tuesday. We call it Pickup Tuesday. We're going to look at quarterbacks, tight ends, and defenses there in our final segment here on Locked On Fantasy Football. Pickup Tuesday, or look at the waiver wire. Before I tell you that, I'm going to remind you that today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less than the PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times their money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. All right, thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We are free and available to you on all platforms. All right, let's get into the running backs. And these are some surprising guys early that I'll get into in shallow leagues that were not managed in a lot. James Cook was really hot there in a lot of drafts. Zach Moss really impressed the Bills enough to stay in the mix here behind Devin Singletary. So a little bit of steam loss for James Cook, but I think he can regain that. So in deeper leagues, you can look at James Cook. I think a lot of people drafted Ken Walker ahead of him, knowing that the Seahawks backfield a little bit in flux with Rashad Penny and his injury history here. But James Cook is available in some shallower leagues that you can look at. So he should not be out there. I think he can have a key role right away here as the Bills change of pace, receiving back here behind Devin Singletary. So something to look at there. But James Cook should be managed in a lot of leagues. Kenneth Gainwell, people have been cooling off on the Eagles' backfield. Miles Sanders has shown that he's going to be healthy here from the hamstring. There's more confidence in Sanders here from the coaching staff. You also have Boston Scott there, and they also signed Trey Sermon there. We'll get ahead of ourselves in a pickup later, but Trey Sermon, they picked up off waivers from San Francisco. So you add Trey Sermon to the mix with Boston Scott, cooling down on Gainwell with the re-rise of Sanders here. But Gainwell's out there. He's an upside player, shallow league. So 10-team leagues, Cook and Gainwell should be managed and on rosters. They're at least as high into handcuffs if something were to happen to Devin Singletary and or Miles Sanders. All right, let's get into running back here. Khalil Herbert, I really liked him as a value pick in a lot of leagues behind David Montgomery, but people have been blindly taking David Montgomery, that so-called dead zone of running back. You know what I'm talking about. Antonio Gibson has fallen into that. Breece Hall a little bit has fallen into that here, where it's just past the Ezekiel Elliott, James Conner kind of tier of running backs. And Montgomery's just been taken as kind of a default RB2. He's going to start the season as the Bears lead back here, and we know he gets pretty good volume there. But Khalil Herbert is nipping at his heels here. Again, at least a plus handcuff. Herbert should be on rosters if you have Montgomery especially there to make sure you have that Bears backfield. But Khalil Herbert, the more explosive runner, new look offense here. Again, I could see a situation where they like Herbert, much like Aaron Jones here, in similar Packer-style offense, and they fade David Montgomery as a little bit more of a Jamal Williams type A.J. Dillon back, and that would mean that Herbert gets vaulted into the key role here. So still high on Khalil Herbert having an impact here. The other Herbert that should have been drafted is out there. Now, couple other backs. These guys had a lot of steam here, but I think what happens in fantasy football drafts is we go all over the board with positions. Values happen at other positions we don't expect. We get running backs that are not necessarily our direct handcuffs or upside backs. We just want to diversify our portfolio, as we mentioned, 3 words that are key here, and having options to start at running back. So it's hard to stash guys early in the season when you want all kinds of answers for your lineup, especially when you've got a flex position to fill or you got some early injuries that you're navigating through. But 2 guys that have slipped through the cracks, I think, are the 2 rookies named White, Zamir White and Rashad White. Now, what's happened with the situation with Zamir White, you've had Amir Abdullah emerge as maybe a key receiving target here. Josh Jacobs kind of resettling there as the lead back here for Josh McDaniels. So you've had Zamir White, the rookie from Georgia, highly talented rookie, kind of slipped through. He was buzzing, we know, as soon as Kenyon Drake was let go from the Raiders, but a little bit of cool down there with his value. So he's now available out there for you. With Rashad White, I think Leonard Fournette, there's a little more confidence in him. Again, that's right before the dead zone at running back where you get Elliott and Connor. That's where you take Fournette. So a little bit more confidence in him. Maybe seeing a little bit of a crowd in that Buccaneers backfield, but I still like Rashad White as the plug and play here should something happen to Fournette. So at least his plus handcuffs, Herbert, White, and White should be picked up in leagues. The next guy I would be careful with, just because I don't know how the Chiefs backfield could play out, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire might be fine. You just still have Ronald Jones on this roster, Jerick McKinnon, but don't forget about Isiah Pacheco, another buzzing rookie we need to keep track of. I think he's a good fit for what the Chiefs want to do with the running game and also help catch passes here. So looking at Isiah Pacheco is really a guy that you want to add now. I think he was a draft pick potentially had they released Jones, but now he's still valuable, I think, to go after. Again, Chiefs backfield still wide open here. They have a very good interior offensive line with Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, and the like here. So they're going to be able to run the ball if they can find the right back here. We saw Darrell Williams be rather effective in the system here for the Chiefs. So it's just all about opportunity. It hasn't quite been plug and play easy since we've seen Kareem Hunt work out there as an upside back in the right system for Andy Reid. So Edwards-Helaire hasn't lived up to that. So we hope that someone can, and maybe it's Pacheco if CEH is not up to the task here. I would think he's in line to get key touches there. Is Jones just not a pass catching back there for the Chiefs? All right, another one we're looking at is Jeff Wilson Jr. Now, he's clearly the number 2 back in San Francisco. So we like Tyrion Davis-Price, but they moved on from Trey Sermon here. But you look at Raheem Mostert also gone. They've really liked Wilson. They love him in the system for sure with Kyle Shanahan. So when you look at that, he's the primo handcuff right now. We know Elijah Mitchell, slight of build here. We know that the 49ers have had 5 leading rushers in 5 years of Kyle Shanahan as the head coach. So, again, you always had to be looking and speculating there with Sermon out of the mix. He was the sleeper. Now it's Jeff Wilson Jr., who should be managing a lot of leagues, especially if you have Mitchell on your team. We got ahead of ourselves. We talked about this player a little bit earlier. We dropped his name, Donta Foreman. People are on Chuba Hubbard still as the handcuff to McCaffrey, but they went out and got Foreman for a reason. They saw what he did behind Derrick Henry last year. Did some great work with also Dontrell Hilliard in the mix, but Freeman was really the guy. So they might see a situation where it's Foreman, I should say, where you have Donta Foreman and Dontrell Hilliard that they worked out well. Now you can see that playing out with Foreman and Hubbard there replacing Christian McCaffrey. So I really like Foreman. He's been a good runner all the way going back to his days at the University of Texas. They want to run the ball, pound it. Foreman has some versatility, has some burst as well. So, again, he's the guy that I would look at more as a handcuff here. And here's a sleeper handcuff. Now, the Bengals one is a little bit tough between Chris Evans and Samaje Perine, but the Steelers one is not as complicated. I know they have Benny Snell, but Jalen Warren, the undrafted rookie there, has been the most impressive back, not named Najee Harris there in camp for the Steelers. So if you need a cheap handcuff there for Harris and you forgot to do that in your drafts and you know he's going to be out there, a lot of people are not going to be on him, Jalen Warren, you can get him now and make sure that you've insured your Najee Harris pick there in fantasy. All right, there you have it. There's a look at the running backs to target on the waiver wire ahead of week 1 here on Locked On Fantasy Football. We'll get into wide receivers in our next segment, then we'll close looking at quarterbacks, tight ends, and streaming defenses that you can look at here. We have a no kicker policy on the show, so if you need help with kicker, figure it out and plug in a guy there that you're looking at. But we'll get through all the main positions here in your leagues for week 1 here as we complete the show. We kick off our week 1 coverage here on Locked On Fantasy Football. It is week 1, as we mentioned many times, and that means it's time to get in on daily fantasy football. And the best place to do that is on PrizePicks. Yep, PrizePicks, we mentioned at the top of the show that PrizePicks is the easiest way to play daily fantasy. And look, you can go right away with that game, Josh Allen. You can look at his passing yards. You can go look at Cooper Kupp's receiving yards on the other side. Maybe you're a little adventurous there and want to look at Devin Singletary and Cam Akers rushing yards in that game, but a lot of stuff that you can look at right away on Thursday night. And PrizePicks is going to set a number, and all you have to do is beat that number, and you will emerge victorious at PrizePicks. It's daily fantasy made easy for you. How does it work? You just pick 2 to 5 players, and they go score more or less than their PrizePicks projections. You can win up to 10 times your money with any entry. No competing against other people, just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch. This includes NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Euro basketball, cricket, and more. That's right. NFL is here, so the biggest action is there. And again, my recommendations on Thursday night, stay with the under on a lot of things. I think it's going to be a defensive-minded struggle there between the Bills and the Rams. So under. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. It's safe and fast withdrawals there at PrizePicks. Currently operational in more than 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. Now, first-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On to sign up for instant deposit match up to $100 there, only at PrizePicks. They're the easy way to play daily fantasy sports here in 2022. All right, it is time to continue the show here, Locked On Fantasy Football. It is a Pickup Tuesday. We're looking at the waiver wire that you can exploit here ahead of week 1. Let's turn our attention to wide receivers here. And we'll start with Isiah McKenzie. Speaking of Thursday night, I think McKenzie's going to have a big role here. Jamison Crowder not living up to expectations so far. He's kind of a pedestrian slot receiver anyway. We know that Josh Allen loves the slot here. So Gabriel Davis getting a lot of hype. We know opposite Stephon Diggs, but so is McKenzie. They need that third target. He may displace Dawson Knox as they use 11 personnel, push the ball downfield. But Isiah McKenzie in deeper leagues, he's going to have a key role. Reality-wise for the Bills, we'll see if that translates into fantasy, but a good stash on your bench there. And if anything were to happen to Diggs or Davis, you'd think that McKenzie would have a pretty big role eating up targets in the slot. They love this kid. They want to get him involved. He's been a wrinkle player for them in the past, but McKenzie may be establishing himself as a regular part of the offense, and it's an explosive offense. Now, we wouldn't be investing in an offense in the third receiver / fourth receiver, including Knox, there if we didn't think McKenzie had some value here. But, yeah, some exciting attributes as well there that you look at. So that Cole Beasley slot has been very important here for the Bills, and I don't think it'll go away with McKenzie stepping into that role. Julio Jones, he's a name that has been drafted in a lot of leagues there late, but if he's available out there, I think he's going to have an important role here early. He might displace Russell Gage because Gage is battling a bit of an injury issue here. So also with Chris Godwin on the shelf, Julio Jones is going to get maybe some significant snaps here. That means he may not see a ton. He may see 30 a game here, but they're going to get him in the situation to make some big plays, work in the red zone, play off Mike Evans a little bit. We know Jones wasn't a big scorer notoriously with his days at the Falcons, but that's different when you have different quarterbacks, and Tom Brady might need to lean on him. So Julio Jones might have some value early in the season for you that you have to look at here. Jahan Dotson is your number 2 receiver for the Commanders. He was pretty hot here in a lot of fantasy drafts, but he had the rise of George Pickens and Romeo Doubs and other receivers that got buzz that were rookies a little bit more. Chris Olave also buzzed a little bit late, Garrett Wilson. But don't forget about Jahan Dotson. He's a type of receiver that Carson Wentz likes outside. He's a field stretcher, the clear number 2 for the Commanders, opposite Terry McLaurin. So, again, a good stash here. We'll see how it plays out, Wentz and Dotson, the chemistry. We'll see how the Commanders' offense can be trusted here in the passing game. But Jahan Dotson should be rostered in a lot of regular-sized 12 to 14-team leagues. Another player I like, he's a third option on his team as well. A little bit of Isaiah McKenzie-ish here, but it's an explosive offense with a top quarterback as well. It is Joshua Palmer, and Justin Herbert that went on a show and said Palmer was his fantasy football sleeper. So he wants to throw to this guy. So we're going to look at another option in this passing game as well later when we break down tight ends. But Joshua Palmer looks like he's for real here. Keep in mind, Mike Williams has an injury history. Keenan Allen is 30, so could be a bit of a slowdown there for Allen. Palmer in 11 personnel with the Chargers is going to be out there quite a bit. The Canadian sensation, I think he can make a lot of plays for this team, so will not sleep. Again, a third receiver on explosive offense, you can look there. And Palmer certainly fits that bill. Now, I'm not sure how the Cardinals passing game is going to play out. I feel like Marquise Hollywood Brown is going to be a little bit disappointing. A.J. Green is not going to give us a lot here. Zach Ertz is probably going to be primary, but who do you look at as short to intermediate targets? They also lose Chase Edmonds. We've been banging the table for this guy as a late-round stash here. But Rondell Moore, they're going to try to get the ball in his hands. I could see 5 to 6 touches, maybe that around that many targets, 6 to 8 targets maybe for Rondell Moore on the shorter end here, but he can take every ball the distance. He also is used in short areas. We saw that last year, kind of those push passes that we saw from Tom Brady to Brandon Cooks at one point. So they could use Rondell Moore like that, but definitely the forgotten man as everyone's looked at Hollywood Brown. I've not had too much interest in him. AJ Green is not bad, but I look at Rondell Moore as having a multiple role in this offense. Again, backfield, getting him out in open space here, short area receiver. They did draft him in the second round. They want to use him more as a weapon. I think you'll see that here in 2022. The next receiver you'll look at, we've had a lot of Juju Smith-Schuster go off the board for the Chiefs, and Sky Moore has been the buzzing target late. But Marcus Valdes-Scantling profile as well as a deep threat here. He's a better pick than Mecole Hardman at this very stage. People have been on Hardman a little bit, but again, Hardman has the threat of Sky Moore. MBS is going to be involved a little bit. I don't see big numbers for MBS. I don't see his role necessarily increasing from what it was in Green Bay. The occasional big play threat that can do that and take over some games. But in the right matchups, we know, and the Cardinals secondary is pretty bad here when you look at Byron Murphy and Marco Wilson. You can exploit them downfield pretty easily. So MVS might be good for a shot play for Patrick Mahomes downfield. They can work with Juju in this big slot, and you have Travis Kelce. So MVS is the most likely player to line up and make a big play in this game. Mecole Hardman, Sky Moore, more quickness after the catch type of receivers to replace that element of Tyreek Hill. But in terms of vertical, MVS would be the guy there to take a dart throw here. If you're desperate and needing some depth, week one, maybe a plug and play even at wide receiver in deeper leagues. Jarvis Landry, I would stash him, but more so if something happens to Michael Thomas. He had the hamstring injury going in to the season. We'll watch that carefully here. We also have another receiver who can target, Alec Pierce, clearly going to be the number 2 target to Michael Pittman Jr. then in Indianapolis ahead of Paris Campbell. You can look at Campbell as well, but I think Alec Pierce is the preferred pickup there, the rookie from Cincinnati. A lot of speed, good vertical ability, can play well off the talents of Michael Pittman. And then in your receiving core late, I think you can look at Christian Watson or Romeo Doubs, the Packers receiver that wasn't taken after Allen Lazard. So a lot of people want Doubs. You can look at Sammy Watkins. There's maybe an injury concern with Lazard. We'll get into that a little bit more. But if Watson or Doubs is out there in your league, you got to stash them there because either rookie could have a prominent role in this Packers offense with Aaron Rodgers. And finally, when you look at it, Wan'Dale Robinson and Kenny are some guys that you can look at in the Giants offense that have some special qualities here. And it's a offense that is kind of wide open looking for targets between those two guys and Sterling Shepard, and you have Kadarius Toney, who knows how healthy he is, but I think Wan'Dale Robinson is the preferred pickup here over Kenny Golladay if you're going to tap into something here with the Giants offense here. And again, it's a little bit of desperation play, but I do like Wan'Dale Robinson if he's out there in a lot of leagues for you. All right, we will get into the quarterbacks, tight ends, and defenses here to close our look at the waiver wire here on Locked On Fantasy Football. If you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, you're depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There's a new flavor ready. Delicious, indulgent cookie dough covered in chocolate. That's right. Built has done it again. Let me introduce you to your new favorite. Cookie dough chunk puffs have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks. And of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. Run to Built.com to snag a box for you and the family. It'll be the perfect treat. Or you can find a really good hiding place and just hoard them for yourself. Like all Built Bars, the new cookie dough chunk puff is covered in 100% real chocolate. That means they're healthy and tasty. Chocolate-covered cookie dough with a light, fluffy texture. So good. What's great about Built is that all of these bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently. It provides tons of health benefits for you. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. You're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff, whether you need a snack for your workout, a late-night treat, or just need to grab a quick bite. Built is the perfect protein bar, and they taste better than a candy bar. Dish the calories, fat, and sugar. Grab yourself a Built Bar. It's easy to get in on Built Bar right now. Go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDON15 to get 15% off your order. Use the promo code LOCK15. You'll get 15% off your order. All right. It is time to close the show here on Locked On Fantasy Football. Our first look at the waiver wire. We're doing it for week 1 here, and excited to break that down for you at quarterback, tight end, and defense. So I was surprised in a couple leagues that is in that Jameis Winston was not drafted. Now he's well in the range of looking at a QB2 here this season. So when you look at Jameis Winston, I think again, people are maybe down on him coming back from the knee injury. Maybe they're still worried about Taysom Hill. Not sure about with this offense without Sean Payton, with Pete Carmichael Jr. in fully control of it. But when you look at it, the weapons are there. You look at Michael Thomas, you look at Chris Olave, you look at Jarvis Landry, Alvin Kamara out of the backfield, maybe a little bit of help at tight end from somebody. But you definitely look at Jameis Winston. There's some potential. They want to be a more aggressive downfield passing game. You also have Marcus Callaway. Don't forget about him. He's a deep threat that Winston really likes. So we'll see what plays out with Jameis Winston. It's a good matchup here in week 1 if you want to stream him against the Falcons. I'd be a little bit careful just knowing that A.J. Terrell's back there. But overall, this Winston matchup is very good. The Falcons' pass rush is almost non-existent at this point other than Grady Jarrett inside. So good streamer this week. Matt Ryan is another fine streamer. I like his pickup, and he should be the backup for a lot of quarterbacks in your league. He's got the good enough weapons here. Pittman, we like that connection a lot. We like Alec Pierce. We like Paris Campbell. We like maybe their tight end situation here. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But you look at Matt Ryan, he's in a good spot here to be at least a valuable backup, and he has some streaming value for sure against the Texans on the road this week. So Winston and Ryan on the road, but in controlled environments, no weather there. Falcons and Texans figured to be 2 of the worst teams in the league. Mac Jones, to me, is not a recommended play against the Dolphins. They have a pretty good defense. We know that on the road. We want to see what plays out with Devontae Parker. Now, Jonnu Smith in the mix with Hunter Henry healthy at tight end. We'll see how it works out. Kendrick Bourne, Jacoby Myers. I don't have a lot of high upside feelings. I like the Patriots running game quite a bit with Ramondre Stevenson rising behind Damian Harris. But Mac Jones, again, stash backup. I think it'll have a little bit of value, but I want to take a wait-and-see approach here with Mac Jones. But Winston and Ryan are the two main targets there. Baker Mayfield, again, wait and see with him. I think the connection with DJ Moore can be pretty good, but we want to see other targets develop, see how the chemistry plays out with Robbie Anderson or Terrace Marshall. You can't just rely on Christian McCaffrey and the dump-offs there for Mayfield's value. So be wary he doesn't suddenly jump into huge value here from what he was with the Browns, but he could have some value as a backup here. And Jared Goff, another streamer that you can look at for sure this week. They're playing the Eagles at home. The Lions are. The Eagles are going to put up some points in this game. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Jalen Hurts doing some damage here against this Lions secondary. Aiden Hutchinson's going to only have limited impact there. So I think the Eagles are going to put up points. There are going to be some garbage scenarios. Goff is going to be well protected here. Throw the ball downfield to Amon-Ra St. Brown, T.J. Hawkinson, and DJ Chark, even without Jameson Williams in the lineup early. So Jared Goff can put up some numbers here this week in a decent matchup for sure. Again, volume. That's what Goff is going to be based on. Again, the protection and the weapons say Goff is going to have some good value in a lot of games where he's going to throw and you don't have too much resistance. The Eagles' defense can be tough with the former Lion Darius Slay, but I think there's enough there where he can put up the numbers and should throw 35 to 45 times in this game. All right, let's turn to tight end, where Irv Smith Jr. is our top target if he's out there. I still think he can be a key third target behind Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. I think that's a bit in flux. KJ Osborne was drafted a lot in leagues, but that left Irv Smith on the waiver wire. So Smith, I still think if you're pinching at tight end, he could help you out here sooner rather than later. Albert Okwuegbunam, the news that Greg Dulcich is going to be on IR really helps. He's the rookie. We also know that Tim Patrick is on the shelf. So the Broncos looking for that third target there. Will it be the rookie Montreal Washington? Will it be KJ Hamler behind Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy? I think it's going to be Albert O. And again, the Russell Wilson tight end connection has been fickle over the years. We know that. The best connection was with Jimmy Graham, a veteran there with the Seahawks. But Will Dissly, we've tried to get some value. But again, it's a streaming situation when you're looking at some of these tight ends of the waiver wire. And Albert O has some value. And I really like the athleticism he can provide in that offense. Mo Alley-Cox, speaking of Matt Ryan, liking Pittman in the middle. You have Pierce and Campbell we talked about, but he also likes throwing to the tight end. Alley-Cox now flying solo without Jack Doyle. I know there's some guys behind him. Kylan Granson being one of them, Jelani Woods being another one. But when you look at Alley-Cox, we've talked about this. He's in a good spot there, and he's a pretty good athlete in his own right as a converted basketball player. We saw that with Tony Gonzalez, same type of guy, hoopster that Matt Ryan liked to throw to in Atlanta back in the day. Other great athlete, Kyle Pitts. So the tight end has been key for Matt Ryan. Alley-Cox comes into play. Now, we talked about Joshua Palmer as a third target. Gerald Everett, we liked this week if you need a streamer. The Raiders not very good at covering the tight end, pretty weak at safety here. So Gerald Everett with Donald Parham maybe needing a little extra time to get going should be looked at there. Isaiah Likely, he's a rare breed. He's a tight end handcuff, but there's a chance that he could develop as the third target here behind Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews. So a little bit of double value there with Isaiah Likely. I love him. If you have Mark Andrews, a little bit older, we know he has some health issues that we have to concern ourselves with, but plug and play Isaiah Likely, something were to happen to Andrews. He's kind of like Tyler Huntley is to Lamar Jackson. So keep that in mind there. Now we go to a current Ravens tight end, the rookie there, love him out of Coastal Carolina, to a veteran that was a first-round pick from South Carolina. He's on his third team. He was on the Ravens. He was on the Falcons. He's on the Bengals now, so he's in the C.J. Uzomah role. They don't have too much behind him. Keep in mind they look at O.J. Howard, so not too interested in Drew Sample as a receiver here in Cincinnati. They want to use him more as a blocker here. So another player you can look at, again, not great value here with Hurst. I wouldn't play him against the Steelers, but you can look at him as a backup here. Hayden Hurst, very good athlete. We know that. And maybe he's been limited in his opportunities there with the Ravens and Falcons, but maybe he gets a little bit more of a chance here to be a key fourth target behind Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. All right, finally, let's close looking at the defenses here on the waiver wire. The Browns are out there on quite a few leagues here. Baker Mayfield, everyone's made a big deal out of that narrative with him ripping the Browns, but Browns defense is pretty good, folks. They got Myles Garrett. He was a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year last year. You got Denzel Ward. You got a loaded secondary back there. Make a lot of plays. And this Panthers offensive line, I know they added Ike Ekwonu, still work in progress in pass protection here. So when I look at the situation here with The Browns, I think Myles Garrett, this front is going to be pumped. Kevin Stefanski is going to know Baker Mayfield, go after him pretty hard here. So, again, I like the Browns quite a bit as a waiver wire pickup. The news that Mitchell Trubisky is starting, sign us up for the Bengals. If it was Kenny Pickett, I actually was be a little wary for the Bengals, but it's Trubisky. He can make mistakes. He gets skittish under pressure. This offensive line is a little bit better, but still better in the run blocking area, and that's where they're going to have some success. But there's going to be some sacks and takeaways there from Mitchell Trubisky. He's going to keep the ball too long. You got Trey Hendrickson to rush the passer here, so really some concerns. So some sacks are available. Some mistakes are always there with Trubisky. So keep that in mind. So do like the Bengals. So the two Ohio teams from the AFC North like quite a bit of streamers this week. I also like the Eagles. I know Jared Goff, we talked about him as being a streamer, but that could come with some mistakes as well. With Big's play on the other side, coming back to Detroit. So I do like the potential for some sacks and takeaways in that game for the Eagles. And that's how we kind of predicate our defensive targets here in Locked On Fantasy Football. Sacks and takeaways. First, the Titans can be in line for those. Bummer to lose Harold Landry, but they got Jeffrey Simmons up front. They also have one guy in the backfield there, and Kevin Byard, who can make a lot of plays. So I think this Titans secondary is improved. You got Daniel Jones on the other side. Giants offensive line will work in progress here. Sacks and takeaways, Titans can get those. Finally, on the other side of the Browns, we'll bookend it with the Panthers here. Panthers are going to have some good value, I think. Again, coming out against Jacoby Brissett. Brissett can make mistakes. He can hold on to the ball long. I don't think you'll get a lot of sacks. This Browns offensive line is pretty good. They're still going to run pretty well, but you'll keep the scoring down and maybe some mistakes from Brissett, a couple turnovers, maybe something in the special teams game here to really produce here for the Panthers. But that would be my last pickup that I would be targeting. In that order, Browns, Bengals, Eagles, Titans, Panthers here in week one that should be available on a lot of waiver wires here to help you stream defense and get the desired results here. So there you have it. That's what we're going to do every Tuesday, Pickup Tuesday, waiver wire look. So this is the waiver wire for week one on Locked On Fantasy Football. Thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, go check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022, an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. Local team experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, plus a betting angle from Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets, all combining into the Ultimate NFL Preview. Search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on their Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For Locked On Fantasy Football, for the Week 1 waiver wire, this is Vinnie Iyer. Check us out tomorrow as we'll start breaking down the matchups of Week 1, starting with the Bills-Rams opener.